All right, let's get this show on the road. Recording in progress. This is a atypical um, webinar for Friends of the Owyhee. Every month, in the middle of the month, we have a webinar on a subject of the Owyhee volcanic plateau, as I think of it as a geologist, alternating with our stargazing presentations that we were doing last year. And this year, many people signed up for our middle of the month webinar, but we had some scheduling conflicts, which I'll tell you a little bit about here in a minute. But we can go ahead and get the show on the road. So this is a recording that's going to go straight onto YouTube, not live for the webinar audience, unfortunately. So let's see. Let's share my screen here. There's my presentation. Boom. So, my name is Sammy Castongway with Friends of the Owyhee. I have a master's of science in geological science that becomes relevant today in our webinar. Then I also work part-time for Treasure Valley Community College in Ontario, Oregon, as many of you may know. And that's sort of how I got into, as a geologist by background, into into instruction of astronomy rather than just sort of my stargazing background, which I'll talk a little bit about today. And then also another relevant part-time job that I hold is the geology a co-instructor, geology field camp co-instructor for University of Oregon, which is what I'm doing right now. I'd like to recognize our partners that we have for our webinar series, and particularly for stargazing, the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network that is really working very hard as a network to try to both promote as well as move through the process of getting 3 counties of southeastern Oregon designated in some way with the International Dark Sky Association as a dark sky sanctuary. So this work here with Friends of the Owyhee is actually part of that overall effort that we have. And then we have some local community libraries that we also work with that are getting this information out to their patrons. So maybe some of you found this link through your local library. That's the Ontario Community Library, the Vale Library, Harney County Library, and McDermitt Library. First and foremost, I'd like to recognize that the Friends of the Owyhee out of Ontario, Oregon, we reside as well as steward land that is the indigenous people of Northern Paiute and Shoshone Bannock tribes, ancestral territory. And they were very unfortunately removed from their homelands, forcibly removed from their homelands during colonization of Turtle Island by Euro-Americans. And this is a history that is clearly explained in many books and clearly felt and lived for many people around Turtle Island and North America. So I'd just like to recognize that where we, as friends of the Owyhee, friends of this land and stewards of this land, reside, is there were people that came before us living on this land and also stewarding and honoring this land. I'd also like to start with recognizing the James Webb Telescope images, right? Really, really neat stuff. So if you haven't seen some of these images yet, do just Google James Webb Telescope images, or it's probably come to you through some way, shape, or form already. But this was one of those several images released, not of course the first one that President Biden talked about, but this is the Carina Nebula, and just mind blowing and shocking and beautiful. I do want to start with this, and I should also probably say something about Comet K2 that's been maybe in the news and in your awareness. is both of these things are well, this particularly is a deep sky object, and the comet is not like Neowise that we were able to see with our naked eye in the summer. Was that last year? 2 summers ago? Instead, it's raining like cats and dogs right now. Um, Instead, this comet is faintly visible with a telescope or binocular. So I'm actually not going to really address the comet in our stargazing lesson today because it's a telescope feature. We're doing stargazing with the naked eye. And then also things like this. We're definitely not going to talk cosmology and formation and nebula formation of stars and solar systems. Instead, this month is all about the zodiacal constellations. So here's a little outline. In past presentations, I've covered gear, awareness, and process. You can find those archived at our YouTube page, as I think the next slide says. And then I do want to dive into the importance of natural night skies for just a moment, and then we'll talk through the meat of tonight's subject, the 13 zodiacal constellations. So this is an example of some of the material that's archived over at the YouTube page in last year's 2021's archived stargazing lessons. So just some tips and tricks about having a good time while you're and learning and really holding this information in your mind while you're stargazing. So please go check those out. So the importance of natural night skies, this really takes 3 parts. And this is also archived in the last couple of presentations, but I just, we really cannot stress the importance of these things and say this over and over and over. Maybe this is the first of these videos that you've watched. Maybe this is you've been watching all along. But 3 things here that natural night skies are a cultural resource. They're also what are the threats, and then what are the solutions? Oregon Outback Dark Sky Sanctuary, as I mentioned, is offering a type of solution in collaboration with the International Dark Sky Network, as well as there's opportunity to do citizen science and take some dark sky measurements. But the end result here is if you're here, so you want to learn something about stargazing, you probably like stars and the natural night sky, so please become an advocate for dark sky, whether that is collecting all the data that you can at Globe at Night, engaging in, particularly if you're in these 3 southeastern counties of Oregon, engaging in the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Sanctuary. And then also maybe that's just enjoying this video and talking to your friends about about the joys of stargazing in the night sky. That's still an advocate. Okay. So first of all, a cultural resource. Now this slide I've covered a couple of times now in that archive, but I teach my astronomy class in kind of 2 ways. One of those ways is kind of that really big zoomy kind of way where we kind of pretend we're in a spaceship going to different planets and learning about the geology of those planets. I mean, after all, I'm a geologist, so that's kind of like planetary geology. The other half of the class, astronomy class at TVCC, all of the labs are composed of naked eye stargazing and really teaching students and helping students along in cultivating this relationship with the night sky that is something that spans thousands and tens of thousands of years in our human background. No matter what nation you're from, no matter what state, no matter what nation, no matter what part of the globe, no matter the DNA of your people, we as humanity have stories abound through all of our cultures about the stars. So here's an example of many of those. Now, I want to bring up this other example that's relevant this time, another example of the night sky being a cultural resource. So I'm actually in a weird room back here. I'm in a dorm room at the University of Montana Western in Dillon, Montana, where for many years now, I think this is actually the 13th year that I've been doing this this camp. Not teaching that many years, but I think 9 years I've been teaching geology field camp. So just to describe here for a second, 400 level class that geology majors who've been going through their undergraduate degree in geology. Some of them walked in June and they have their degree. Some of them are returning next year. But this is a capstone class for geology majors all around the nation that you're required to do 4 to 6 weeks of some type of field geology to be a graduated geologist, right? Many geology programs around the nation require this. So for University of Oregon, I've been doing this for a long time. Here's one of my old geology club shirts from my school in 2010. But I'm out here again and again. And yes, I'm a geologist, and yes, it's about teaching and training students. Here's a couple of students right here with Block Mountain in the background. There's Marley Miller, my co-instructor. She's actually my master's thesis advisor. So my teacher, who we've worked together now 10 years out here in this field area, working with students to make these absolutely gorgeous and beautiful maps using a topographic base map to map geology. Okay, so if you want to learn more about that, you can read those 2 links right there. They're a few years outdated, but they're still relevant. It is raining cats and dogs. I hope that doesn't ruin the sound of the video. So where does stargazing come in? Okay, I'm talking about geology and geology field camp here, but this was actually my introduction to stargazing. I like to call geologic mapping kind of the ultimate naturalist experience because we are so incredibly engaged with every inch of the landscape, whether that's the rocks themselves and the way that they're dipping. Here's Marjorie, one of this year's students, using a Brunton compass to take the strike and dip of beds. But we also find ourselves talking about the lichen that's growing on the rocks, the vegetation that's growing on the rocks. Of course, we're looking around for animals all the time. Today, I saw a pronghorn skull, as well as many pronghorn, some bighorn sheep up on the Block Mountain. And we're also, the weather is very important to us, right? In these pictures, it is a bright blue sky because during these days it was really sunny and intense sun, but we've obviously had afternoon thunderstorms come in as well. So we're engaged with the sky and an ultimate naturalist experience. And so I started stargazing, going to geology field camp and being with students and staying up at night and then wondering what are the constellations and nobody knew. So I took it upon myself to start learning constellations so I could point things out and understand the night sky for myself. Now, Dillon, Montana, I've returned to year after year after year. In 2009, I remember seeing the most big, brilliant shooting star I've ever seen to this day. And a few years later, after starting to learn that I wanted to know more about the night sky, there was a graduate teaching fellow that she knew a lot of these constellations. And we were outside under Scorpio, it turned out, and she taught me several of these constellations just on the fly, Scorpio and Cassiopeia particularly. And that has stuck with me to this day. And I have decided to add knowledge until finally getting to Treasure Valley Community College to teach astronomy. All right, so what's my point here? I got 2 things. One, sorry for missing the live webinar with scheduling conflicts. I'm out here with students, really working hard. Thought it would be just fine to get here at our time, but field conditions are field conditions. So then the second of these is that I just want to communicate that my inspiration for getting to know the night sky is really rooted in not just geology, right? That's my science and my background, but that it's an ultimate naturalist experience. A naturalist is one that engages in all parts of nature, again, whether that's the rocks or the night sky. So just wanted to give that little bit of information. So light pollution is one of the largest threats to natural night skies globally. And even here in this dark continent, areas of darkness around the United States still remain, of course, today. And hopefully for many generations as we come up with solutions, knowing that light is bleeding out from the cities, and that rural communities, though they are still rural, are getting larger by the decade. And even those rural communities are beginning to cast off extraordinary light that is encroaching upon the very, very dark areas of the night sky. So we can just begin to use lighting that makes sense in municipal laws or regulations to try to curb light going up into space, as well as we can do things like the International Dark Skies Places program. And here's the 5 of those. So the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network, we're looking at number 4, an International Dark Sky Sanctuary. So here's our little corner of Oregon down here, the 3 counties here, and you see just how few light dots there are. And actually, half of Malheur County is a little bit more gray color, not from any cities in Malheur County, but of course from what we call the Boise bubble of light that's extending out here. And so we'd like to really curb this and preserve the natural night skies that we have in all 3 of these counties. But as friends of the Owyhee and the Owyhee watershed coming down here from Nevada and across Idaho and exiting here, about half of the watershed is really getting bled over with this Boise bubble of light. So if we can begin to advocate for lights in the sanctuary to be shielded, as well as work with other municipalities to shield light, then we can preserve this rich cultural resource for generations to come. Okay, so part of that is citizen science. We really need help and across the network, but particularly in Malheur County, to begin understanding how dark the natural night sky is this deep in the Owyhee. So if you're interested in that, you can check out a kit from the Ontario Community Library, or of course, talk to us here at Friends of the Owyhee, and we can get you started on a road to drive that we really need, deep out there just to be able to collect this data. And the campaign is coming up here. Here we are, July 19th to 28th is the next globeatnight.org campaign. There are a couple of other apps you can use on your phone, Loss of Night and Dark Sky Meter, but the real benefit to using the website Globe at Night is that it plugs into this global citizen science data set. So it's really easy to do. Here's the 6 steps, including sending the data. So this upcoming, the upcoming open time period, observational time period, as the full moon goes down to, which I forgot to recognize in the last picture that there was a full moon the night of the webinar, that as the full moon wanes away to be a new moon, then we have nice couple hours of darkness where we can get the best readings possible from your observations. So finding the constellation Hercules is important for this. So let's do that really quick. Spatial awareness, you're going to look to the south, and along that southern horizon, right at the south, you're going to look for Scorpio. In past webinars, we've talked quite a bit about Scorpio, at least a couple of times. And today we'll talk about Scorpio because Scorpio is a zodiacal constellation. So down there in the south, you're looking for the pincers of the Scorpion, those nice kind of 3 stars in an arc. And then Antares, or the heart of the Scorpion there, that's kind of a pretty bright orange star low on the horizon. And right now, Scorpio's tail goes below the horizon before it comes back up to Shaula over here. Now, so you're looking for Scorpio as your landmark. And then above Scorpio is this constellation Ophiuchus, the snake bearer. And then above, towards the zenith, and the zenith is that point directly overhead in the middle of the sky, that at the top of the sky. As you go towards the zenith from the south, you'll approach Hercules. So he's not a zodiac constellation, so we're not going to go into Scorpio in a lot, or sorry, in Hercules in a lot more depth. So there's Scorpio with the pincers and the tail. We're looking up here to Hercules, and here's how I see Hercules. So I'm going to annotate this a little bit, but basically I see kind of two boxes here. They're polygons. They're not exactly square boxes, but I'm going to illustrate them as square boxes. So there's this box, and it's kind of stacked on top of this box with nice wide shoulders, okay, and then kind of a more narrow waist down here, and his legs are out wide. So two boxes stacked on each other, and then you have the limbs coming out from there, from the respective portions of the box. All right, so that's Hercules for you. So please go out and use that globeatnight.org data tonight if you can. Great night for stargazing, ought to be. And using that Globe at Night as part of a global citizen science data collection project that the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network is actually pulling some of the data from as well. So it's still very important for the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network to use Globe at Night. All right, and as I've mentioned that all of these past videos from 2021 and this year, the 6 stargazing videos, as well as our other amazing and wonderful guest lecture material are archived over at our Friends of the Owyhee YouTube page. So last May, we talked about the 5 visible planets. Here we are at the 13th, talking about the, a couple days after the 13th might be when you actually get to see this, the 13 Zodiacal Constellations. And then in September, we'll do a stargazing presentation again, looking at the summer triangle. Looks like my E cut off there. All right, let's get into some of the meat of tonight. The Zodiacal constellations. So first of all, let's set that awareness and then talk a little bit about that process again. So to set your awareness, your cardinal direction, you're going to be looking to the south. But actually, we're going to start in the south, but it's along the ecliptic, which goes all the way from the west to the east in an arc through the sky. Okay, I'll talk a little bit more about the zodiac and the relationship with the ecliptic in a second. When can you see this stuff? You can see this stuff all year long. The zodiac constellations are all year in the southern hemisphere. So, but this season, of course, and the ones we're going to focus on are available for viewing during the summer. Tonight, the sun sets at about 9:30 in Ontario, Oregon. Not where I'm at, but that's where I'm going to go ahead and label. And then the moon is full. It's very, very bright. We're a day after the full moon by now, but it's still incredibly bright. And then I want to remind you of your hand measurements. So today we actually are going to see kind of a measurement of degrees that is about the measurement that you can use with your raw hands. Again, holding them at arm's length away and either making the fist or out wide or even just a finger. Okay, 1 degree, 10 degrees, 18 degrees. All right, so the process, you want a good view of the southern horizon, and you're going to look along the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun. And really, that's about all there is to this process. I should have added the bullet in here that it's kind of like a roadmap, is the way that I think of it. Again, once you, this is kind of like Main Street almost. The ecliptic is like the main drag through the night sky because that's the arc of the sun. Okay, so if you imagine during the day, or I guess you probably saw it today, the sun in the sky, you can see it in the morning, and then you can see it during sunset and during noon. And so if you were to connect that, it's a big arc through the sky. Now in the summertime, the sun is very high, and it comes up a little bit north of east, and it sets a little bit north of west. And it spends a really long time arcing through the sky. And in the wintertime, it's a little bit further in the south, and it stays a little lower on the horizon. So we'll see, as we're looking at the ecliptic, that Where the sun is at in the night sky or in the day sky right now, up high, the constellations or the ecliptic, the zodiacal constellations are actually quite a bit lower on the horizon, closer to the horizon. Um, well, because that's where the sun is at during the winter when the sun is in that constellation. What do I mean by in that constellation? So this is the question of what is a zodiac constellation. That's defined as one being along that arc of the sky, the ecliptic, or the arc of the sun, the ecliptic. And astronomically, there are 13 astronomical constellations, and then you can contrast that with the 12 of traditional astronomy. And because the constellations actually they vary in size, some of these things are, they fill up maybe only about 8 degrees of arc space. The sun, the length of time the sun spends in those constellations is also variable. Okay, we'll see that in a kind of a time lapse video in a moment. So some examples you're possibly familiar with these, and these are real constellations: Gemini, Leo, Capricorn, Pisces, Scorpio. But one that you're probably not familiar with, the 13th sign of Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer. So let's get into looking for those. Oh, looks like I missed that. So this is looking at about 11:30 at night from Ontario, Oregon. Looking in this to the south, we have the southeast, southwest, and the moon is just rising over here in the southeast. And this is set for the 13th of July. So the first thing that you're going to be looking for is those pincers of Scorpio, right? There's that arc of 3 stars. There's the red heart star Antares, and here is the tail of Scorpio coming down, and the stinger star Shaula. So we're looking for that. Okay, there we go. Illustrate that. Scorpio is a zodiacal constellation. So that means the sun actually transits in front of this constellation at some time of the year. Okay, because the stars are so distant, they're like a tapestry on the back wall, right? And the sun, being relatively close to us, only 150 million kilometers away, is going in front of those stars from our perspective. Okay, so there's Scorpio, and then to the west, about 10 degrees. So I already have this one here, but we're going to go over to the west about 10 degrees. So that would be about a fist way out here to this star, and it kind of makes a triangle here, or almost like I think of it as like a triangular hat on top of the scorpion's pincers. I don't know. I think of weird things, but so it kind of looks like that. That's Libra, the very top of the scales of Libra. And so Libra's sign is scales of balance. There's the top, and then the base of that rests right here at the pincers of Scorpio. So the transition between those two, the hard demarcation between those two is at the very end of these stars. Then, then we should also go to the east about 20 degrees from the arc of Scorpio's pincers to find the teapot, and that's Sagittarius. So it does, it's already annotated here, but it does look a lot like a teapot. It's a relatively rectangular base with sort of a triangular spout over here and kind of a little handle, and then a little decorative arc here on the top. All right, so kind of changed the view a little bit in Stellarium. So I did 2 things here, and if you haven't downloaded Stellarium on your desktop computer or on your space phone, highly recommend it. So I'm using the desktop version here, which has all these extras that you can add. So 2 things I've done here. I've turned on the constellation characters, not just the line drawings, but turned on the drawings, the characters that are here. So here's Scorpio again. And then the other thing that I did is I turned on the ecliptic. So this is the path of the sun through the sky at this time or at one time of year or another. All right, so we see then here's Libra with the triangle hat, and the ecliptic goes right through the middle, and then it goes through Scorpio, okay, and then it goes right through this guy's knee, and then it gets into Sagittarius. So these are constellations you can see in the night sky tonight, and we'll go through the rest of the zodiac. But I also want to draw attention to this knee. Okay, so yes, the ecliptic looks like it doesn't go straight from Scorpio over to Sagittarius, and this is in fact Ophiuchus, that is the 13th zodiac sign of astronomy. So what do I mean by 13th and dividing these things and constellation space and stuff like that? Well, astronomers being scientists, which is based by mathematics and trying to quantitatively put bounds on things or collect data. So quantitatively, the constellations be rather than just being sort of an open space or a line drawing of stars, there's defined polygons around the constellation that define that constellation. So astronomers have divided the night sky up into 88 constellations. And Ophiuchus occupies the ecliptical space between Scorpio and Sagittarius. Therefore, there is that 13th sign of the zodiac. All right, so what we're going to do now is move to the west for a little bit till we run out of visible constellations, and then we'll move back to the east until we run out of visible constellations. And by visible, I just mean what you can see tonight if you stayed up till 4 a.m. And then we'll move on to constellations that you can't see until fall or winter or next spring again. So we'll work through all of those. Now, so moving west from Scorpio, from Libra, you're moving towards the sunset. Okay, and that's important because right, the sunset is on the ecliptic. So if you know where the zodiacal constellations are here, then moving towards sunset, you should be right on the zodiac. In if you were to, or right on the ecliptic, and if you were to do that, you go along and you find this nice bright whitish blue star Spica, and that's the sprig of wheat that Virgo is holding down there in her left hand. So there's the constellation Virgo. It's actually quite a long constellation. If you see, here's Libra ends here and goes all the way across over to here. So that's a lot of arc space. Okay, compare that to the arc space of Scorpio, right? Even though at some parts Scorpio is a pretty wide constellation, where the ecliptic goes through Scorpio, it's really only like 11 arc minutes, right? It's not very long. Okay, so then moving west a little bit more, you can see the tail of the lion back here. That actually makes it, here's a star here, makes kind of a right triangle, is how I like to describe that. And then we have the sickle shape of the lion's head. Okay, and the lion's head is visible right after sunset if you have a really clear view of the western horizon. All right, so we're going to keep going east, or excuse me, west over to a couple of constellations that are below the horizon as the sun sets. Well, because the sun, again, it's in front of the stars. So we're going to keep talking about constellations that are right behind the sun, or as you can see, the sun is within that constellation space. So in Stellarium, I did another thing, and that was to remove, basically remove the Earth. You can remove the landscape and just see the night sky. So having removed the landscape, which we, in the last image, you saw the horizon right through here covering up Leo. Below the horizon, you can see Cancer the crab down here, and then the Gemini twins. So currently, the sun is in Gemini. Wait, what? Let me get my astrology book out. So not according to astrology. Astrology is divided into 12 signs that are all the same length of time. But as you can see, that fundamentally isn't the what's really happening here, that the ecliptic or the sun takes longer to transit through some constellations than others. So actually, the sun is right smack dab in the middle of Gemini, even though the the astrology zodiac says we're somewhere in Cancer right now, on our way over to Leo over here, somewhere in mid-July. So astrology says we're in Cancer, but there's some type of misalignment. So let's take a little better look at that misalignment here just for a second. So these are two charts that I got, online from Allure. I think that's a makeup or a makeup brand. And then Open Mind BPVA had actually this really nice article on you could call it your actual astrology sign, or just thinking of it as where the sun is at during your birth. So you can see there's actually quite the misalignment. Here we are, let's see, we're in Cancer, July 21st to August 9th. So the sun, as I just showed, is actually in Gemini until July 20th. And then that's the day that we turn to Cancer, where over here, you actually have Gemini ending a full month before actual, right? And then in Cancer begins a full month before actual. So it's a different system. It's somewhat outdated, I guess you could think of it that way. But what we're looking at on the right-hand side is the length of time the sun is actually spending in that constellation. So this is a good reminder that astrology is not astronomy, even though they share some language, the constellations. The many things stop right there. That's about the depth of those two, the connection of those two. Okay, so back looking to the south, we're going to move to the east now. And here I had a nice little prompt question to ask you to ask. You should remind yourself of the three that we just went through. So there's Libra with the triangle hat. There's Scorpio with the arc of the pincers, the heart of the scorpion, Antares. Here's the tail, and there's Shaula, the stinger. And then over here is the teapot of Sagittarius. So now we're going to keep going this direction. Well, that doesn't probably make any sense to you and my screen, but we're going to keep going to the east. Okay. As we go east, so there's Scorpio. Okay, a little different size. There's the pincers. And again, as the ecliptic goes through, it passes through Scorpio, it passes through Ophiuchus, then over all the way through Sagittarius. So there's the teapot shape, right? Here's the rectangle. There's the spout, and here's the little handle over here. And so the spout is actually in the constellation Sagittarius looks like from the forearm to the tip or to the arrow there. And interestingly, this arrow in the Greek legends, this centaur was put here to keep an eye on Scorpio. If Scorpio was ever going to start chasing Hercules again, then which is just right up there, Ophiuchus standing between them, then he would shoot the scorpion. So he's just keeping an eye on him. Anyway, we transit all the way through Sagittarius before we get over here to Capricorn, the sea goat. Okay, really long constellation again before we get into Aquarius, the water bearer. Okay, and if we keep moving east, here's again the water bearer. Starts here and goes quite a ways. And this is a really difficult part of the night sky. We're far away from the Milky Way. So if you think about, the solar system, the galaxy as a disk here, of matter. When we're looking at the Milky Way, we're looking along the disk so we can see that concentration of matter and concentration of stars. But when we're looking not towards the Milky Way or perpendicular to them, we're actually looking up or down into dark space rather than into matter. So there are fewer dark stars in that space. So the constellations are a lot more difficult to kind of stitch together. And that would be all the way from, that would be all the way from Capricorn through Aquarius and particularly Pisces. Pisces is a pretty difficult constellation to really know well for a couple of different reasons. It's made of a bunch of different faint stars. It's a huge constellation, so it covers a huge amount of arc space with those faint stars, as well as there's kind of a limited amount. Well, I shouldn't say that it's a limited amount of time that it's up in the night sky, but at my latitude, there's a limited amount of time of the year where you can actually see the bottom half of the constellation too. All right, so we head through Pisces, and then we head over here through Aries, and then into Taurus, the bull, which we're getting back into the towards the Milky Way. So we have a lot more bright stars. There's the eye of the bull, as we've talked about with the winter circle, and Pleiades. Okay, then as we go continue to the east, we're back into Gemini. So there's the tip of the horns of Gemini, the Owyhee constellation from the winter circle, and then over here, the stars of Gemini, Castor and Pollux. So we've gone all the way around 360 degrees around the Earth looking at those. Now, that's through some pictures, and that might be difficult to see and envision. And even, it takes a year to do stargazing every single day and to look for the zodiac constellation to see all of this stuff. But luckily, we have Stellarium. So I still have the free version of Camtasia. Maybe one of these days I will not have just the free version. So stick with me that we have the TechSmith free trial watermark on there. But here's a short video showing the sun transiting along the ecliptic. And so all I'm doing here is changing the date, quickly, and seeing the sun move through the ecliptic. Okay, pretty sure I did this with sound. Oh, good. Same clothes today. So turning on and off the landscape to show you that I've removed the Earth, and then also you can turn off the atmospheric brightness to make the stars pop a little bit more. All right, so there's the date, 7/20. We've moved into Cancer, so you can keep a look at the constellations coming up and looking at the date down here. Virgo, okay, and the way the stellarium is, it's a little weird, so I've got to move it a little bit, try to get more room on the ecliptic, and transiting through Libra. You can also see the phenomena of the planets moving along the ecliptic, which is super cool. There we go through Scorpio and Ophiuchus. There's Mercury coming back retrograde. Aries, Aquarius, Pisces, and let's see, I should probably move it again. Yep, good. So we just got into the constellation space, Pisces. Yeah, Stellarium. It's just weird how it pivots. Okay, continue. We're over here in April. Moving through Aries into the bull, which is a really long constellation. Look at those long horns before we get all the way over to Gemini. And there we are. A year from today, the sun will be in Gemini at that time. Okay, so that's what I have for you tonight. That was a little bit of an introduction to stargazing. As we've done in the past, we're taking on sort of different subjects of the night sky one at a time around something that's visible in the night sky that you can walk out and see tonight. Okay, look back in that YouTube archive for more discussion. If you're really new at this, more discussion on some of the gear and kind of taking care of yourself. If you're going out stargazing with children, highly recommend, as we always do with children, that they are comfortable. They're going to have a lot more fun and a better time if they're comfortable somewhere to sit, proper clothing, things like that. And on September 21st, we're going to do this again, talking about the summer triangle. So there's not any Q&A because there's no comment section because I'm alone here. But coming up next month, we have a really exciting webinar that's recreation based. So if you're not familiar with the three pillars of Friends of the Owyhee mission, we are conservation advocates. And we do conservation advocacy through networking and education primarily. And then second, we are stewards. So we go out and do trash cleanups about once a month. The first Saturday of each month, we have a type of cleanup somewhere. And sometimes we do other projects like, we native seed collection with BLM, trails, bike trails, repairing corrals. But so the bike thing, recreation is that third pillar. And here we are, we're going to have Cameron Sanders of Renaissance Cycling come talk to us about the Cap the Climax cycling route in Eastern Oregon. Okay, so if you're interested in that on August 17th, go ahead and you can register down at the link below, or also find that on our Friends of the Owyhee webpage under events. All right, well, thank you very much, and y'all have a good time. Stop share, and I can stop record. Bye-bye.